This is the EWN Podcast Network.
Welcome to Late Boomers, our podcast guide to creating your third act with style, power, and impact. Hi, I'm Kathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Join us as we bring you conversations with successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and people with vision who are making a difference in the world.
Everyone has a story, and we'll take you along for the ride on each interview, recounting the journey our guests have taken to get where they are, inspiring you to create your own path to success. Let's get started.
Hi there, I'm Kathy Worthington, welcoming you to our latest Late Boomers episode with my co-host, Mary Elkins. Today, we have an exciting guest to visit with, Michael Harris. He has great stories on how to really turn the dark moments of life into catalysts for personal growth and serving others.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Michael is a #1 best-selling author, trainer, coach, yoga teacher, and lifelong entrepreneur. We will hear about his book, Falling Down, Getting Up, and his many life adventures. Welcome, Michael.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I looked through your show, and you have some wonderful guests, and I listened to some of them too. And like Rhonda Britton, which was just on recently.
Yeah,
She's
great.
wonderful. I've known her for a number of years. Dr. Tristina Anderson and her book Resilience. I actually helped her launch her book.
Really?
Beate Gillette. So you've had some great guests. And the fun thing that I liked about what you're doing is Santa's Secrets that you do at Christmas. I couldn't believe that. You got Santa Claus coming out there talking about Medicare.
Yeah.
Every year we talk to Santa. Thank you for checking us out.
We're
It was inevitable that we talk to you now then, because you know all our other people that we were talking to.
Well, some of them, yeah.
Absolutely.
And
we feel so fortunate to have Santa actually come and talk to us.
Yeah. Well, if I grew a beard and my hair out a little bit, maybe next year I could get there. I don't know. Because I think I'd have a white beard.
Well, maybe we should have a casting call, Kathy.
There you go.
I don't think Santa would appreciate a casting call right now. He's kind of entrenched.
Well, I'd have to use a fake belly, though, because I don't have much of a belly.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good. Okay. We're glad you don't have a belly. So tell us about your background a little bit, Michael, and what blackberries have to do with being an entrepreneur.
Well, where do you want me to start?
Anywhere.
Like
anywhere, okay. Blackberries.
Anywhere.
You know, blackberries, now they're calling them boysenberries a lot. You know, they kind of changed the name a little bit. But back in the 60s when I was a kid and my dad was an entrepreneur, he owned a number of gas stations around Oregon. And he always talked about, you know, providing something that other people want to buy. You know, and I thought, oh, great. So, you know, I was a kid and out picking blackberries, and Mom always made the best blackberry pies in the neighborhood. I mean, they were the greatest, and all my friends would come over and have Mrs. Harris's blackberry pie. And one day I started thinking, and I said, you know, Mom, why don't we sell these pies? And we came up with a deal. I went out and picked them, and she baked them. I went around the neighborhood and sold them for $1. She got 50 cents. I got 50 cents. We later raised it to $1.50. But I'm kind of convinced that the Girl Scouts stole my sales line. You know what the Girl Scout sales line is? It's not, do you want to buy a box of cookies? It's, how many boxes do you want to buy? Right? So I'd go around the neighborhood and I'd say, don't you need an extra pie for Thanksgiving? It's coming up. You can freeze it. You know, so I would always say, how many do you want to buy rather than do you want to buy?
That is really
Michael,
an entrepreneur's story.
Yeah.
And Michael, I have to tell you I'll just insert my little entrepreneur story because I was about 7 or 8 years old and I started making pot holders on a loom that somebody gave me, and I would go to the dime store and buy all the little loops and make these beautiful pot holders. And I sold them around my neighborhood, door to door.
Wow.
And everybody bought every single pot holder I could make. And
Kathy, you can do that again.
I was thinking the same thing, Mary.
I sold them for 20 cents each.
Wow.
You can raise the price, inflation.
It took a long time to raise $5. But
anyway.
Well, see, if you make it on your own and sell it here, there won't be a tariff on it. So you can keep the price low, right?
Yeah, no tariff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Depending on where the supplies come from.
That's right.
Yeah. Tell us a little more about your background, though. What led you to where you are today?
Well,
besides blackberries.
Besides blackberries, yeah. I grew up as, pretty much a normal kid. I loved my life, and we go to Hawaii. I learned how to surf on Waikiki Beach as a kid. I'd be 10 years old chasing the 12-year-old girls up and down the beach, and just having a blast. Back in the mid '60s, and just loving it. Dad had business over there, so we were over there quite a bit. And I was a bit of a hotshot water skier as well. And we skied around some lakes around Oregon. And I loved water skiing. And one day I hit the beach. And when I say hit the beach, I mean I smacked the beach too hard. And initially we went to, it was actually on the Oregon coast, a lake down there. And we went to the local hospital, and they said I was basically bruised up and I would be okay. Well, the next day we went back to Portland because I had been throwing up blood, and went back to Portland and went to the doctor at the children's clinic at the time. And he said, go to the hospital. Went to the hospital, and all as I know is I woke up about 2 weeks later. And they had taken out 60% of my liver, my gallbladder. I had 6 cracked ribs, a collapsed lung. And I woke up from the back end of a coma. That's where I regained my consciousness, so to speak.
Wow.
And so that was quite an event. It took me a year to recover, over a year, really. Several years, but the main healing happened in about a year. I was really lucky. I had 21 blood transfusions, and it was one of those 20-hour surgeries. I had a near-death experience. When I left my body, and the best I can relate this, that it was at the end of my coma, and that's where I woke up when I came back, because when I left, and there was what I call a garden of spirits. There were spirits around. And as I was talking to them, and I don't remember everything that was said, but I do remember as I started coming back, and I knew I was coming back, I said, I don't want to go back. And they said, you're not done yet. You have to go back. And they said, don't worry, everything is going to be okay. That's 54 years ago, and I'm still here.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Somehow they still want me here.
Yeah. You found a niche.
Yeah.
So that's really quite a story. Why do you think everybody's story is so important?
Well, it's interesting because even in your intro that you have on your shows, you talk about everyone has a story. And it's so true. Even Robert Lane, which is the audiobook guy, he talks about that too. Your book, your voice. And one of the things that didn't end up in the intro is I'm also a literary scout for Morgan James Publishing. And so I talk to people every day all around the world about books that they have submitted in their manuscripts and such, and getting it written. And I get to do that. I'm so lucky that I get to do that. One of the things that I found, so coming back around to your question, why do I think story matters? there's a lot of swirling energy, as I call it, in the world right now. We've got our planet, we've got this atmosphere, it goes about 30 miles up, and within that atmosphere, there's a lot of, like I said, swirling energy. There's a lot of things going on every part of the planet right now, within our country, other countries, all around the world. And part of it creates a lot of division and, separation. And it's my experience that when we sit around and tell stories, think back to the caveman days. They used to sit around the fire and talk about, oh, I went and got this, saber-toothed tiger, and you couldn't believe what happened, and I got him down, and now we got food, and da-da-da. And they would sit around and tell stories, and they would create connection with their tribe, right? And even though many of us have different ideas and different thoughts and opinions, when we tend to sit down, with each other, we tend to start to connect with each other. And I think that's what stories does. It helps us connect. And like your podcasts, like all these guests that you have on, the diversity of guests. I mean, like, again, going back to Rhonda Burton, she has an incredible story. Her whole life story and, what happened when she was a child. I won't get into it, but if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to Rhonda's story, go back and listen to it. You'll be amazed. But, and she's taken her life experience and made something good out of something that was beyond swirling energy. It's difficult at best. Difficult, I think, damps it down even too much. It's unbelievable. It's unfathomable.
Yeah.
But so many of us have stories of that swirling energy, those difficulties, those challenges. And as we survive those things, we can help tell those things. So telling our story helps other people realize that they may not be alone. They may have something similar, may not be exactly, but it's just like, oh, I couldn't believe it. I was listening to Kathy and Mary one day and their stories and the people that are on there. And it's just like, I feel so much better now because I heard that. I heard what that person said.
Thank you. That's what we aim to do. That's our mission.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell from moment one, right?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, you talked something about the law of attraction. And I know you know about that. And how does the law of attraction get activated by the law of Goya? And I don't know what the law of Goya is. So please explain.
Most people don't. The law of attraction, and there's the book, The Secret. A lot of people have heard of it. Most people have. My late brother, Bill, actually helped put that book together and is one of the authors in the book as well. And he was 10 years older than me, so he started studying, the law of attraction way before I even thought about the law of attraction. Right? And, The Secret, a lot of people throw rocks at it. It's just, you can sit around and get anything you want. Well, that's not the law of attraction. The law of attraction doesn't say if you sit on your couch for 5 years, Aunt Joan is going to give you $10 million and life is going to be great. No. It says, yes, you have to consider what you want in your life. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment about everyday law of attraction. But it only works if you do one thing. And Kathy, that's the law of Goya. Get off your ass.
Get off your ass.
Right.
I was wondering what that was.
So you actually got to get up and take action. You have to do something to get what you want. You just can't sit there and wait for it to fall from the sky.
Oh, I've been waiting.
Yeah. Well, I related to this. Yeah.
I've been looking up at the sky, waiting. But...
Looking up at the sky.
But the original question is, how does it get activated by that?
Well, yes. Yeah. How does it get activated? I'll give an example. Imagine you want an orange. And everybody, as soon as you think that, you think of an orange in your head. There's that picture of the orange in our head, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't have one at home, but you want to attract one into your life. So you get off your ass, get into your car, drive down to the grocery store, pick out an orange, go through the line, exchange some money, some karma for that, go back home and eat your orange. So you just attracted an orange and you got it by taking action.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we do that all the time. I think some people look at the law of attraction as something difficult and complicated. It's not. We do it all the time. You want to get a nice new sweater. You want a pink sweater or whatever color it is, and you think, I'm going to go down to the store and get it. And lo and behold, there it is, right there. Right? And you exchange that money, that karma energy again, and you've got your new sweater. So we're doing this all the time. So why can't we do it in everything that we do? We kind of do, but we don't really realize we're doing it.
That's true.
Mhm.
And I love the way you express money as karma.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Well, the root meaning of karma is action, right? And for the most part, we have to take action. We have to do some work. We have to do some type of activity to get paid for, whatever it might be. Whether it's working in a gas station, whether it's being an actor, whether it's being a podcaster, being an author, whatever it might be, you actually have to take action, that karma, to receive this money. I worked at one time in the 90s raising money and capital and investment banking, and I worked with some people. I learned a lot about money that I'd never thought about before. And if you think about it, money's nothing more than symbols on the inside of a cell on a spreadsheet, right? Think about, if you go to the bank, you use your QuickBooks or Quicken or whatever you're using, and there's these symbols. And there's 724.61, right? So that gives, what was that? $721. We have a certain amount of energy around that. Now you add a zero to that, and now you've got $7,271. You add another zero, just a zero. You got 72,000. Add another zero, 720,000. Another zero, 7.2 million. So money's nothing but a bunch of symbols on a cell, on a spreadsheet that we give power and meaning to.
Wow, that's interesting and very powerful.
Yeah.
Pivoting a bit,
Sure.
back to when you had that terrible accident, you didn't really go into how you learned to walk again. Would you talk a little bit about that, what you went through?
Yeah, well, the walking part really happened with something else that we haven't talked about that happened in my 20s.
Oh.
So, I started healing from my water skiing accident as a kid. I didn't start school until January. I had a tube in the side of me for a drain tube, and I went from the captain of the teams to the last person being picked because I couldn't do much, right? So I had a lot of self-esteem issues, and I really struggled at that point with connecting with other people. And within a couple of years, I was a teenager that had all the parties and drank too much and did all these things that I shouldn't do and getting in a bunch of trouble. Well, by my late 20s, my dad died when I was 26 years old. He died of a heart attack, young, his fourth heart attack. He was 58.
Ooh.
And then at 28 years old, I ended up at OHSU, which is Oregon Health Sciences University in Portland. And they said the artery in my right leg was 100% blocked, and the artery in my left leg was 65% blocked.
Oh.
I was 28 years old, had vascular disease, atherosclerosis. I had, a lack of a better term, an old man's disease at 28 years old.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And they did bypass surgery on both my legs. It's called a fempop, and I won't get into all the detail, but it helped restore my blood for a couple of months. And
Only.
then it had reblocked again, and they wanted to do more surgery. And I had been on a cane. I mean, literally walking on a cane at 20 years old, I could walk maybe 10 feet.
Oh.
I could hold
Wow.
somebody's arm and maybe walk 20 feet, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
So when they wanted to do more surgery, I said, well, why is this happening? They said, we don't know. And at the time, I didn't really know much about anything, so to speak, and about other opportunities to heal. And so I left the hospital AMA. They pushed me in the wheelchair, out to the door. I got up, I had my cane, not having any idea what I was going to do. I ended up at a place in Southern California at the end of Pico and Ocean, and it was called the Pritikin Longevity Center.
Oh, yeah.
Not there anymore. I think it's a boutique hotel now.
Yeah.
It was called the Pritikin Longevity Center.
Mm-hmm.
And, I could barely get into the place from the car. Just to get inside of it was a huge struggle with my cane and holding my mom's arm and trying to get into this place. And I go downstairs. It was like the second day. I go downstairs and talk to the doctor, and we start talking. And he said, why don't you just get up and walk? I said, well, what do you mean? I says, it hurts. I can't. He says, oh, yeah, I know. He said, don't worry about it. Just get up and walk. So what did I do? I said, okay. And he said, when you do that, you build collateral blood vessels in your legs and restore the blood to your legs. Where the surgeons in Portland, best surgeons in the world, technically, they know how to use the knife. Yet, they told me when it hurts, it's to stop and come in and get bypass surgery again. This guy said, oh, no, just go out and walk on the boardwalk. And I think you guys know where that is, Santa Monica Pier, down to all the way down to Marina Del Rey. And he said, just go out there and walk and then sit down. There's the little wall between the sidewalk and the beach right there. And I started walking, and I'd walk 10 feet, sit down. I'd walk 12 feet, I would sit down. I'd walk 15 feet and sit down. And there was, I was a young man in the 20s, and there was lots of incentive around the beach area down there, and lots of women in bikinis rollerblading up and down the boardwalk there. So I didn't want to look like the 98-pound weakling. I wanted to stand tall, right? So within 2 weeks, I ended up walking 2 miles. I could walk from the pier to Marina Del Rey and back, and, I would just do that all day long. And then I'd go in the Pritikin Center, and their food was all plant-based food. At the time, this is the 80s, the late 80s. Nobody called it plant-based, so much. They called it more vegan. And it was kind of really woo-woo at the time. Now it's pretty mainstream now. But through the combination of changing my diet as well as walking up and down, the boardwalk really started to change things. Then there was one more thing. And this is a road we can go down, a long road on this one too, is I'd never done yoga before, but they had kind of a little gentle yoga stretching class in the basement there. And so I'd go to these classes, and, I'm in my 20s. Most of the people that were there were 70 or 80 or something. I was the young kid, right? And I started doing this stretching, and I ended up falling in love with yoga. So I started yoga really in 1987. I've owned a couple of yoga studios. I trained thousands of teachers. I don't own any studios now, but I still teach about 8 or 10 times a month. And here I am 38 years later, still alive, when they told me I'd be dead in 6 months.
Wow.
Wow.
Right.
What a great story about walking.
Yeah.
Because I think walking, keeping moving is so important.
Yeah.
Because I have friends that have had knee replacements, And it hurts like hell to walk on a new knee like that, but you have to. You have to move to make it heal. And what would you say, to switch subject a little bit, what's the real secret to calming the mind? You're obviously good at this.
I'm going to go back to myself as a kid. I remember, one of the neighborhood bullies when we were growing up was, hitting me and, all this stuff. And I don't know exactly how old I was. I'm going to say I was 7 or 8 years old. And I ran back home and I was huffing and I was puffing, just right, and all scared. And mom opens up the door and says, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, Todd's chasing me. He's beating me up." And so, what does mom do intuitively? Says, "Oh, why don't you just take a breath?
Oh,
Just calm down, take another breath." And so, mother's intuition, whether they know about the science of breathing or not, is to help their kids just breathe, calm down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the breath is magical, really. I mean, even one breath, we all know it. And, if we're struggling, if something's happened, if somebody cuts us off in traffic and we just go, we just pause. One breath can change everything. Changes the oxygen in our lungs. It changes our central nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, our vagus nerve. It just instantly, it happens.
mm-hmm.
So to me, again, it's kind of like the law of attraction. It's always there. We always use it. And the breath is always there. And if we just learn that when we get in these situations which agitate us or trouble us, if we take a breath or two, it's just like, wow, I feel better already.
We're breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's how you teach people to calm the mind.
Absolutely. So like when I'm teaching yoga, it's more about the breath than it is about the posture.
Mm.
Well,
you can feel the breath going through all your muscles and body parts.
Absolutely.
With yoga.
Yeah. But it's like, regardless of whether it's an easier posture or more challenging posture, can we maintain our breath, through the nose, not through the mouth? Because once you start breathing through the mouth, it changes the central nervous system. And again, another pathway we could go down, but it changes it. So like we're getting all this different stimulation. We might be bending right, we might be bending left, we might be in triangle, we might be in cobra, and there's different sensations. Can we just breathe?
Interesting.
So in many ways, it's like a breathing class while you move your body.
Yeah. I think dancers do that too, where they when they dance, they have to, if they stretch their arms or legs or their back or do a certain dance position, they need to breathe into it.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd love to hear more about your being an entrepreneur and talk a little bit about that. I know you already did at the young age of delivering pies, but do you think everybody can be an entrepreneur?
I think everybody is an entrepreneur.
Why do you say
I think even if you have a job, you're an entrepreneur. So part of an entrepreneur is, learning to take care of yourself, learning to help others, learning to, build your own business, learning to put marketing materials together, whatever it might be for whatever particular company or job that you're doing. But if you go to work for, what's coming to me right now is B of A, Bank of America, and say you want a position there, you have to market yourself to them. You have to say, this is the job that I can do for you that's going to help you and your business. So those entrepreneur skills are always there. It's like Law of attraction is always there. Calming the mind. Who taught us? Mom. Who taught us to be an entrepreneur? By going getting a job. So I think that we do all these things, yet we don't always recognize what it is that we're doing.
Well, you make
We
it
don't
sound so
recognize that it's,
easy.
pardon me?
You make it sound so easy.
What if it is?
But yeah, it's all about the recognition of it and knowing we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what most people don't really feel that. They don't, people that say, oh, I could never be an entrepreneur, I got to work for somebody. Yeah. They just don't feel it. They don't understand the stuff that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Dr. Tristina Anderson, which was on your show, she's a great example, you know, and I don't know, I didn't listen to the whole show and I know her story pretty well, but and again, if you're listening, go back and listen to her story. And she went through all these.
Remind us her story.
Yeah, this is just so much difficulty, and you know, she ends up selling an airline at one point. Yeah. You know, and you know, she's a true entrepreneur.
Tell us how writing a nonfiction book changes everything.
Well, I was talking to an individual yesterday. He's a Marine colonel, and he had submitted his manuscript to get published. He's retiring this year. And he said, you know, how did the book creation come about? He said, you know, I started writing just really for myself. I had these concepts in my mind, a number of different concepts that I just needed to get out on paper because I just felt like I needed to do that. And he says, and here's this Marine colonel, attack helicopter pilot, squadron leader, talking about needing to write this information down and these concepts and these ideas and feelings and emotions to help him. And then he realized that it was a book. And he says, I realized that I could take this and make this a book. And he started writing it, you know, in a way and starting to get editing done to it to make it into a book. So that experience that this person had and continues to have really was therapeutic for him to write it out. And now it's becoming a book. You know? Or it will be a book in about a year. It will be out of the market.
And do you coach people sometimes how to tell their own story?
Absolutely, yes. You know, we tell our story. I'm going to keep coming back, Mary, to how simple this is. We tell our story all the time. You know, we go out to dinner with friends and we're sitting around and, you know, hey, Kathy, what did you do today? Tell me a story. Hey, Mary, tell me your story. So like we're telling stories all the time. You know, another friend of mine who's done a fair amount of acting over the years, who's a child actor, has done some Hallmark stuff lately and some stage work. And he says, you know, stage fright is really a misnomer. It doesn't really exist. He says, we know how to talk to people. We do it all the time. It's just recognizing, again, coming back to that recognition that we're doing it all the time. And like when I've done a lot of work with people speaking, you know, and they talk about feeling that nervous energy within themselves. And I said, well, what if that same nervous energy gave you the power you needed on stage to really, you know, stand there and deliver what you want to talk about? And it's just like, oh, yeah. So instead of, you know, shaking in the nervous part, it's just like, wow, this is power. And it is. It's just shifting that energy.
Talk about power a little bit and the difference. I believe you say that there's a difference between power and force. Talk about that.
Power versus force. Dr. Hawkins wrote the book, I don't remember, in the 80s, a long time ago. It's a classic book. And if you're listening to this and you haven't got that book, I invite you to go get this book. But, you know, the idea of power versus force, you know, I like to tell these little stories, right? So, you know, I help parent a 8-year-old girl. And those of us that know about kids, sometimes it takes a while to get them steered in a certain direction, so to speak, right? Get them to do something that's important to do.
Right.
So do we use power or do we use force?
Ah.
We can force the kid, or anybody for that matter, to do something like, you better do this or else, da 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 da, get over here right now. That's more of a force type thing. A power thing is, hey, what if you came over and helped me? Oh, you want my help? And they come running over and helping. So that's just like one example, but there's so many examples like that. It's
how to raise a child.
Well, yeah, and I don't know if I'm ready to write that book. I've got another book in me, but it's probably not going to be about child rearing.
How to raise an adult.
Yeah. I've got my child right here, my inner child.
Well, tell us, how did real monkeys in India inadvertently teach you about the monkey mind? And please explain what that is.
Yeah, the monkey mind. I don't know if you can relate, or if you're a listener here. I think that you can. Is we go through these moments where our mind starts spinning, and we start feeling this internal agitation, and again, that person cut me off, or I can't believe so and so said that to me. I'm worried about my relationship, or what about my job? And, all this stuff is swirling.
Especially when you're trying to sleep.
It happens sometimes when we try to sleep, or it wakes us up in the middle of the night as well. So I was traveling in India a number of years ago, and I was in Agra, and Agra is where the Taj Mahal is. And we're staying at the Taj Palace Hotel, and at the hotel, I can't remember whether it's 2 or 3 stories. It was 3 stories, but there's these guys that walk around the grounds with these long bamboo sticks. They're like 12 feet long. And what they're doing is they're chasing the monkeys away, because monkeys are out there. There's trees and there's grass. But the other thing, and I think this would probably stop monkeys better than the sticks, is the hotel, in your room, next to the sliding glass door at your balcony, is a big bowl of fruit. And the monkeys know that. And they come up, they climb up the side of the hotel, and they try to find the doors that are open to get into the room. Or they'll run up and jump up against the glass because the bowl is right there. So all they need to do is put the bowl in a different part of the room so they can't see it. And they probably won't get as many monkeys there. But, if they open up the door, it didn't happen in my room. It happened with the friend I was traveling in their room. They came out of the shower, and there was monkeys in the room eating the fruit from that bowl. Right?
Scary.
Right. So I started realizing, and it was kind of a yoga trip, and I was traveling around, this is 20-some years ago, 23 years ago, I guess. It was quite a while ago. And I realized that one of the things that I do with my mind, and that I was doing, is that if those monkeys came along, I would feed them bananas, right? In my head, I was, okay, let's be nice. Let's give these monkeys some bananas and everything will be cool. Well, then I realized that they kept coming because they knew they would get bananas, right? So I stopped putting bananas out for them, and then they stopped coming.
Oh, I thought you were going to say just shut the door. So, Michael, talk a little bit about your book, Falling Down, Getting Up, and also why did J. Conrad Levinson, who's known as the father of guerrilla marketing, write the foreword?
Well, Falling Down, Getting Up came about. People kept asking me to write the book. They said, oh, you're a miracle and all this stuff. And I still don't like that terminology. very much the idea of miracles. I think it's just nature doing its natural thing in so many different ways. But people would say, oh, you need to write about this. How'd you survive? I can't believe you're still alive. All this stuff. So I kept thinking about it. And I jokingly like to say I thought about it for 12 years and wrote it in 79 days. So once I made a commitment to write the book, I made a 90-day commitment to write the book, and I did it in 79 days. I was one of those guys at the local coffee shop in the corner with their cup of tea and their laptop for 2 hours every day. I was that person.
That's great to have that discipline.
Yeah. And then I showed up. Go ahead.
It's so great to make a commitment like that starting in front, because is that what you usually advise people when they're writing their own story? Because let's face it, if we have a story to tell, we should be able to just keep telling it for 2 hours.
Yeah, right? Everybody's a little bit different. I mean, certainly that way is, for me, it worked, and I know it's worked for other people as well. Some people need to speak it. They'll speak it into their phone and then have it transcribed. And there's a lot of books today that are ghostwritten.
Some
so
people
somebody
need
else
to mull it in their mind too.
Yeah, some people need to sit at home and have a certain window open and have a bowl of pistachios there. Somebody can go to a coffee shop and do it. Some people need to wear a certain hat, or some people will handwrite it. Some people will do it on their computers.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the book and about why J. Conrad Levinson wrote the foreword.
Well, there's Falling Down, Getting Up. So this is a copy of the book. And I had written it, and then I met a guy named Rick Frischman in New York City. I'd flown to New York to try to get some publicity. I hadn't submitted it for publication yet. And I met Rick Frischman. I didn't know who he was at the time, had no idea. And we started talking, and he said, well, why are you here? This was his press event. And I said, well, I'm here because I got this book I wrote, and tell me about the book, and yada, yada, yada. And I said, oh, it's Falling Down, Getting Up. And he said, I want to publish the book. And I said, well, who are you? And he had published all sorts of different people. And I thought, this guy's out of my league, because, he was publishing like Henry Kissinger and, all sorts of big people. And he said, and at the time, he was one of the publishers at Morgan James. And he said, well, we'll take this to Morgan James. And within a week, I had an agreement written and signed. So I never had to submit it to 50 different publishers and get all those rejection slips. I got lucky. It's just like God works in mysterious ways, right?
Yeah.
So through Morgan James, I met J. Conrad Levinson. J. Conrad Levinson, which was the father of guerrilla marketing, helped the founder of Morgan James, David Hancock, really start Morgan James. And, we became friends, and I sent him a manuscript to see whether he would forward the book. And typically he had only really forwarded more marketing type books. This book wasn't a marketing book. But Jay told me later, he says, I read your manuscript twice in the same day. As soon as I got it, he says, I couldn't put it down. Wow. And he says, the way that I see, it was huge honor from, to hear this from Jay. And, he said, the way that you came about and you healed yourself was sort of like guerrilla marketing. He says, guerrilla marketing is low cost, easy to implement processes to do your marketing. And he says, you did the same thing. You did low cost, simple to implement processes to heal your life. And one thing I haven't mentioned is I also got sober at 30. So I've been sober now for 36 years, for a long time.
Congratulations.
Right? That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And Michael, I wanted to ask you for a summation. What would you like our listeners to have as a takeaway today?
Oh, Well, I can briefly mention my other book, Within.
Okay. Okay.
So this book here, anybody can get for free. And so they just need to go to my link, and I think I gave it to you, but it's really simple. It's within.michaelb, as in book, harris.com/book. So within.michaelbharris.com/book.
Oh.
And go there and you can get the book for free.
Ooh, I'm going to order it for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it really comes back to so much of what we talked about, that really everything we need is already within us.
Mm.
It's just really recognizing that.
I love
the title, Within.
I do too. Everything we need is within us. It's in.
It's
so
right
true.
here.
Thank you so much, Michael. Our guest today on Late Boomers has been Michael Harris, entrepreneur and inspiring author of Falling Down, Getting Up, and Within. You can reach out to him if you'd like to learn more about Michael and get his advice on writing your nonfiction book at michaelbharris.com, or go to his linktree, linktr.ee/Michael B. Harris, right?
That's correct.
And also go to Within. I just wrote that down. Michael B. Finish it for me, Michael.
Within.michaelbharris.com/book.
That's great. And also, listeners, please tune in next week when we'll be meeting another interesting guest, Mariana Cooper, who's an intuitive life strategist. She'll give us some great insights. Please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on YouTube and take us along in the car and on walks and on your and subscribe, please. Let us know what gets you inspired. We're on Instagram at I am Kathy Worthington and at I am Mary Elkins and at Late Boomers. Please send a link to Late Boomers podcast to your friends who may not be yet listening to podcasts. Thanks again, Michael.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and I love what the both of you are doing. So thank you.
Thank you. We love the praise. We're eating it up. We love it. Thank you so much.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Late Boomers, the podcast that is your guide to creating a third act with style, power, and impact. Please visit our website and get in touch with us at lateboomers.biz. If you would like to listen to or download other episodes of Late Boomers, go to ewnpodcastnetwork.com.
This podcast is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and most other major podcast sites. We hope you make use of the wisdom you've gained here and that you enjoy a successful third act with your own style, power, and impact.